Welcome to the Integrate This EdTech podcast, the go-to digital space for educators, tech enthusiasts. I'm your host, Jeremy Mikla, along with my co-host, David Berner.
Last week, we wrapped up our introduction to brisk teaching AI. Today, we are getting back on the Magic School bus to show you some of the amazing things Magic School AI is doing in the realm of student use of AI.
As always, you can find more of our content on our Integrate This YouTube page. We love hearing about any tips you'd like to share with us and others, so please leave them in the comments below. And don't forget to connect with us by subscribing, liking our videos, and following at Integrate This on X and Instagram. So David and I have spent quite a few of our episodes here diving into different AI tools and exploring their use for educators. And so far, we've mostly focused on what can educators do with these different Gen AI tools. This week, we're switching our focus up here, and we're going to take on the perspective of AI from a student's use. And we're going to continue that here for the next couple of weeks after this, as we explore some different tools that are now available or will soon be available for students to use to help explore AI. And in addition to that, teaching our students to use AI both effectively but also responsibly. And so the first of these tools that we're going to touch on here, beginning today, is one released by Magic School. It is called Magic Student, or at least that's what people are starting to refer to it as, to distinguish it a little bit between the teacher version, which is Magic School, and the student version, which is Magic Student. And so what we're going to begin here today is I'm going to take on the role of teacher in releasing some AI tools for my student. And student today is going to be played by David. And he's going to show you the perspective of using these Magic Student tools from that angle. So we're going to begin here already logged into our teacher account. And so you can see here, first off, that David and I are using Magic School as the Enterprise Edition. We happen to have those features that we have paid for. And I would imagine here, even though it's not fully been released out to the public yet here, that Magic School will have some sort of a version on a free side and some on a premium side. So we can't say, yep, all of these tools are going to be available to students beginning today, tomorrow, or the next day, or these ones are held back and are only going to be premium ones. But what we want to more accomplish here today is to show you what some of the possibilities are, and some of the responsibilities are for students to be able to use generative AI. So David, are you ready here to begin this?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay. So I'm this teacher here, and I'm in my Magic School account. And what I want to show you here first is I have the ability as a teacher to toggle back and forth whether I am viewing Magic School as a teacher, or I can click on this other part here, which then allows me as a teacher who's setting stuff up for my students to be able to preview what it is my students will see. However, for today's purposes, though, David is going to play the role of student. So when we look at things from that angle, we'll share his screen instead. So the next thing here that I want to show you is, just like I had these toolbars and these different features that are over here on the left-hand side of my screen, a new one there is called Launch to Students. And so that's where I'm going to really begin here to begin to push out these different AI tools to my kiddos. So when I get here, the first thing that I'm going to see is that Magic School calls these spaces where students are going to be able to begin interacting with AI as a room. And so as the teacher, what I am able to do is to launch a new room. So I'm going to do that here. And now the first thing that it's going to show me once I've launched this new room is the ability to give students tools that I want them to be able to use for this particular day, or for perhaps this particular assignment. So I have the ability here as a teacher. I can let students have access to every single different tool that is out there. There's, I think, over 50 of them. or close to 50 of them currently available. Or I can choose just select I can choose just those selected tools I want students to be able to have. Like, for example, I want David as my student to be able to have access to Raina, to interact with Raina, the chatbot. And again, it's a chatbot for students, designed for students. So it's going to give responses that are going to be appropriate. The next one that I'm going to give David access to here today is going to be the writing feedback tool. And you'll see with some examples here why that will be very helpful for him today. I'm going to give him the ability to translate any text, and I'm also going to give him a step-by-step generator. Now, these four tools are going to be pretty powerful by themselves, and allow David to accomplish different things. Now, if we had a different assignment, you could see I might choose something totally different. Like if we're going to be studying and reviewing for a math test, maybe I use the math review. If I want students to be able to explore some humor, there's a joke creator. And as you see, when you dive into it, you'll find lots of different things that will be available for students. All right. So now that I've selected the tools that I want my students to be able to have, I'm going to choose to now launch this room, which is going to say, would you like to change the name of this? And I'm going to just call this demo room for today. And you can also then change the grade level here. And I'm just going to pick 8th grade here for today. And again, it gives you a review of the different tools that you've selected for them, and choose to launch the room. Now, the next thing that it's going to give me is the code to be able to share to my students. And you're going to be able to share it with them in 3 different ways. One of the ways that you can do, and this is the way that David is going to do it here, and we'll share his screen once he gets there, is go to the website that you see on there, the HTTPS part, the URL, and type that in, and it's going to ask for the student to enter a code. And this is the code that he could enter right here to be able to become a student in this class. If my students are on a tablet, perhaps it would be easier for them, or depending on the grade level they are, it might be easier for them to scan the QR code to be able to get in. The third way that you can allow students to join is to copy the URL directly to this room I've just created. So if it's an older group, they're using an LMS, I could then paste that link into the LMS, and then it's just going to be the students that are in that class that are going to be able to have access. There we are.
So I believe the code was AZBTFW. And so I just put the link I had just added that in um, up top of my URL. Granted, you could share that copy link, through LMS or whatever, Google Classroom, Schoology, those type of things. But I just entered in the one underneath, and then the code that Jeremy was showing was right here. And then I just put in my name, and then I'm going to join room, and then now I'll show up on Jeremy's side there. Um, Real quick, one thing that I really do like about this is that when a student gets in for the first time, it indicates this little disclaimer to students about some of the things they should be aware of with an AI tool. And this right here, I think, is if you are going to have your students use this, this is probably a great conversation starter for some of the things that uh, they should be looking out for. And as you guide them through this process of using these tools, letting them know that you're aware of these things as well. And then the student would just read through and then acknowledge that. And then I'm in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I do think at this point it would also be pretty good to share with your parents how their student is going to be using AI, and in particular Magic School. And so Magic School has a form letter here that you're able to adapt to be able to send out your parents ahead of time and get permission from them before using with your students, especially appropriate if the students are under 13. Um, in addition to having this parent version of a letter, there's also the Magic School AI student contract. So you could also adapt this or use it as it is and get the student's signature. Once again, they have to sign that, or they have to click on that button before they get access that they agree to these terms. But it's also nice, to have it in some other format, some other written documentation somewhere as well. And so Magic School provides both of these documents. We're going to link these resources in the show description, and so that you'll be able to access them if they are things that you want to use before you begin using it with your students. Okay, so now as David had entered the class, his name now appears in my list of students in my demo class for today. And what I am able to do here is I'm able to change the status of the room, and I can lock the room right here until I want students to be able to begin work. So if I show you here then David's screen, you'll see that it says his room has been locked, and unfortunately, you got to wait for your teacher to unlock it. So I can do that just as simply as I locked it. I can also unlock it and resume, and then that student then gets access back to it. And so, David, what do you see here when you have access to Magic Student?
Yeah, so the tools that you made available for this particular room, when you launch it, the the only things that are available are the tools that you had added in that area. Um, so one thing that's important to point out is you can see that the screen that I have as the student, there's really not a whole lot to it. You're not getting access to a lot of the things other than the magic tools that have been assigned to you. So where this would differ from what we're used to with the teacher side is that you have all those tools available to you. And then when I'm in this student room, I only have the four. And then I do have my output history as well. So things that, the conversations that I had started with the tools that were available will get funneled into this area. So it's a really simplified version of what's available to the student. And so, for one, Jeremy made Reina for Students available. And so, very similarly to what we have with Reina in our teacher version as well, is you have the ability for students to have conversations with the chatbot. So I could always do something from scratch here if I, say I need to study for a chemistry is you know, pretty simple. I'll just keep it at that, and then just to show that it's going to get started, and then it'll say, Raina will say, "That's great. Chemistry can be a fascinating subject. How can I assist you with studying for your quiz?" And so you can carry on the conversation from there as the student. One thing that's really great that was added is this accessibility feature, which is the speak button. And so if I want to select speak, it's going to read it. Okay, so you can hear the chatbot basically reading that out for me if I need it to do that. You also have, like I said, you can carry on the conversation. You have the action buttons. And so there are a few things here: clarify, summarize, length, changing some of those things, and then the translate button too. So if I was to want to translate this, and let's say I want to do into Spanish, I can have it translate that. And then what's great is the speak button will still be there. So then I can click that. Okay, so for students that might need that, that option is there, which is really great. And so that's just seeing the chat bot in action uh, with Magic School Student. The second thing I want to show is the writing feedback. So the writing feedback, and luckily I didn't have to write a whole paper, but I had ChatGPT write a paper for me in seventh grade. So um, I should probably point out real quick here with the writing feedback, our we can indicate what grade level we're in, what the assignment is, what kind of specific feedback we want, and then put the writing here. One thing that's pretty cool about this is that if the teacher, if Jeremy would have given me a rubric for this writing, I could insert it here and upload those conditions, the rubric scores into that section, and then it will base it off of the rubric. So whether it's regular feedback, just in a general sense, or more pointed feedback the based on what is required of me as the student, I can put that in there. So for this, I'm just going to do seventh grade, and we're going to say that it is a paper on organisms. We're not going to give it any specific feedback. We're going to see the general version, but then I'll copy this in there. Okay. And then I'll hit generate, and it's going to give me as the student feedback on what I should maybe work on. And as we've talked about in some of our trainings and in our videos in the past too, for integrate this is the the importance of trying to reduce teacher workload. And so this would be one way to do that, because if a student has to write several iterations of a paper and this was more like their rough draft, this is a great way for them to get some initial feedback to strengthen their paper before they turn in the final version to the teacher. And one thing that I like about this is that if you're guiding them through this process and they're doing it through Magic School, um, they're only going to get the recommendations and then try to apply those to their paper and then turn that in. And we're still avoiding them, having it write it for them and those type of things. And we're only giving them those things available that will help aid them in making their work more complete or better. So that's the
Would you
writing
say
feedback.
would you say this would might be I know it's just specific to that particular tool, but that could be a good way for a student to be able to get some sort of peer review to their paper before they turn it in too.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Um, yeah, you could even do like maybe you have two students work together, and you have them review each other's papers, and then you also have them upload it and see what the AI can generate as far as feedback goes, and then they can apply both, the AI, uh, I guess, peer evaluation, and then also the peer evaluation of another student too. So you have kind of two different versions going on, um, and then can help them strengthen it. Um, if so, let's say that I need to get back to that. Let's say that I closed out of that, but I do need to see that feedback again. So because I went away from it when I, wasn't working on my paper. Again, if you go back to output history, that's where this is going to be. So I can view what took place, or I can continue that thread from there as well and continue having my conversation about strengthening my paper. So this is a really good feature for students to be able to jump back in or just review what took place previously for anything that was done when they were working with these tools.
Okay, I'm going to
Um,
pause you for a moment here, right?
yeah.
I'm going to
Yep.
switch it back to the teacher thing.
Okay.
Because one of the things that I am able to do here while David is working on that, I'm able to see what David's use of AI has been and see what his output has been. So I open it up, and just as David had that output history just for himself, I can go into each individual student and view what their output history is well. And if it's something that I think is inappropriate, I can delete that thread. Or if I think David's actions maybe have gone against that code of conduct that we talked about before, I also have the ability here for David that I can go in and I can assign him to be paused. So if I pause David in the middle of what he's working on, it comes up. He can still see his screen. He can still tell he's in Magic School. But David, are you able to do anything with it?
No, I can't. It's paused. And
Right. So now, me as the teacher, I would go over and say, "Hey, David, I saw you were getting a little bit distracted by what you were doing. You know, not, and it's maybe inappropriate, maybe not. But hey, remember the code of conduct that you signed. I'm going to go back and I'm going to unpause you now, and I want you to think about that and work more appropriately." So I go back to the teacher version here, and I hit resume once again. And now that you can see, David is trying to suck up a little bit more, and suggesting that I am just so cool. That's the way to brown nose, right?
yeah.
So that's an important thing to be able to be aware of as a teacher as well, that you have those different abilities. So, David, here, like, let's show one more tool here. We have the step-by-step tool that you should be unpaused here now. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. So if I go into the step-by-step one here, um, Jeremy had shared with me a something like an assignment that needs to be done. And so this one's on creating a stop motion animation. So as the student, I'm just going to put in here, I need to create a stop motion animation showcasing the different stages of mitosis using clay models or drawings. I need step by step directions to accomplish this. And I'll hit generate. And then it will give me some step by step pointers on how I can start that process and progress through that. So that's a really good feature. And obviously, this is just one example. So this could be applied in any content area, anything that the students might be doing to help them start the planning process and then check these off as they go through and complete it.
Right. So again, tools that could be very helpful for a student, because as the teacher, I may give them some directions, but they might want to have them clarified, and using that AI to help give them better directions than maybe I even gave them, or another version of the directions, which might include some of those steps that I hadn't even thought of. And again, here you can see that it put in the latest history that he was working on that particular thing, generating step by step directions. Um, yeah, so those are just a few of the different things that you're able to do with Magic Student and have your students do. But again, I'm just going to show you here then on this teacher page here. I can also see all of my different iterations of different rooms that I have created. And I can, from this screen, just like I did from within them, also change them, and I can go or select them to be able to lock them down if I'm not going to be able to use, or not want students to be able to use them anymore. The other thing that you can also do is, if I'm totally done with a room and I'm not going to use it anymore, I can also delete those rooms. So you saw me here, like this student room right here that is locked. I can just go in and now I can delete that room. Do I have to type in the whole room name?
Yeah, so this is actually a really good thing to show what, yeah, so you could do it from there, or like sometimes what I'll do prior is I'll grab it from the top part, whereas, where it says student room, and I just copy and paste it in there and then delete it.
Okay, one last thing here to show from the teacher perspective here is, we're only seeing one name here because David's the only student that I have in the class. But if there were multiple students, they would show up here underneath. And you can, as I showed before, lock or pause the whole class from the top part up here. But you can also do that individually by students if you select actions from the far right of the screen. And you can either pause or lock them, or even remove them from the room. Like, say somehow some student got your code that you used and they joined it, but they're not in your class. That would be the way that you quickly remove them from the particular class. Or if you had a student that arrived late, you can also show the the info right here too, which would bring back up that code that they could then log in. So if they, were tardy to class or they came late from the dentist or something, they're not able to be locked out of the room for the whole time. Thank you for tuning in to the Integrate This podcast. I'm sure you've picked up some valuable insights that will help you explore Magic School AI for students. Once again, be sure to check the resources in the show description for some links to some helpful documents that I think would save you some time and not having to recreate them all. Special thanks to co-host David Berner and all of our viewers for joining us in this digital exploration. I'm Jeremy Mikla, and until next time, keep integrating, keep innovating, and keep shaping the future of education. Happy teaching.
Don't forget to subscribe to our Integrate This YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram and X for the latest tutorials and discussions in EdTech. Next week, we are going to continue our series on AI for student exploration, so stay tuned as we cover school AI.
David and I will be at the TIE Conference in South Dakota in Sioux Falls, April 15th and 16th. If you're there, be sure to look for us in our Integrate This t-shirts. If you have other events or presentations you would like us to do, please reach out to us on our socials. You can find those links in the show description also. See you later.